So we're now going to build the final project, and this is like a portfolio type website, and there are lots of elements to this. So we're going to be using quite a bit of what we've learned over the series. So there's a couple, like I said, there's a couple of elements to this. I'll show you around what this looks like first, and then we'll talk a little bit about the services we're using, like Adobe Cooler for our color palette, and we're also going to be using a piece of software called Pixelmator, which is just a image editor for OS X. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building up some of these items here. I won't go through each one because it will be a waste of time. But we'll build up a couple of these just so we can see how we can build up images and then save them appropriately for the web. So this is the portfolio. We've got a header up here. We've got a pulled in a font which is called Pacifico, which is quite a popular web font now. A lot of people do actually use this. And we've got a little bit of subheading under there. So we'll be styling these up, and we're doing this according to this color palette here. So the colors that we're using are based on this color palette, and it's really important to keep colors together that work really well. We're not really going to go into color theory or anything like that, but you can go over to Adobe Cooler and choose which palettes you want to look at. Okay, so we've now got this My Work section, and you can see that as I hover over, the opacity of this increases. So I think it's about 0.5 or 0.6 opacity, and just when I hover over each of these elements, the opacity turns to 1. So that's quite nice. And we've got a little transition on there as well, so it's not very harsh. And these are all images, by the way. These are just all images optimized for the web. So down here we've got a little About Me section. We've got this little circle here with a picture of me, and when I just hover over it, you can see it just does a little turn and twist. So it's quite a little bit of fun there. And then we've got this paragraph here, which is contained within our grid, but we've offset it. So we'll be learning about offsetting as well. And then finally, a technique that we're going to look at is turning an unordered list into an inline list. And this is purely with styling, but it keeps the markup so you have an unordered list still. And that's really important. So we've got all of these elements. Oh, the last thing, by the way, is this favicon or favicon, whatever you want to call it. It's basically the icon that appears in the top when you visit a website. You can see that all of the websites I have open in my browser have these. And we'll be creating this within Pixelmator, and then what we will do is we'll save this as a PNG file and then have it as our favicon. Now what you can do is you can actually have a favicon as an ICO file, an ICO file, and this allows for greater browser compatibility, like for older versions of Internet Explorer, but I'm just going to save it as a PNG just to save the trouble of doing it. But what you can do is you can find services on the web that will do this for you. So this is the portfolio that we're going to be building. Like I said, we're going to be using Adobe Cooler to pull in this color palette. I also used an Adobe Cooler color palette to pull in the colors for these images as well. And these just really represent anything that you wanted to put in there. Photographs, it could be absolutely anything. And of course, this is responsive as well. So as we pull this down, we get to the point where, as we come in, we get all of the list of the works there, and then the little About Me here with the text. So it still looks nice on a smaller device. We're not going to be doing this mobile first, just so we can get the hang of designing this out on a desktop. But you can, of course, take a mobile first approach. We're going to be validating the markup that we write with the W3C markup validation service, and we'll also use the CSS validation service as well to validate this. So in the next part, what we're going to do is learning how we create these images here, just in case you wanted to follow along and do so. You can do this in Photoshop. Really, if you are working on Windows, you could do it on Paint. It doesn't really matter if you don't have any sort of professional editing software, but you do need to save these with web optimization and make sure the file size is as small as possible. Because what we're actually doing here, we check inside of our network tab, and I've mentioned this throughout the series, we're generating an HTTP request for each of the images that we're pulling in. So you can see just for this small page, we're pulling in 15 requests. And this is normal for an image-heavy website like these images here. There's nothing you can really do to get away from these. But to make sure that these images are as small as possible, you can see 7.1 KB for this one. You could probably get it smaller as well, actually. That's really, really important. So that's what we're going to be doing. Next, we'll look at creating these images and our favicon as well.